All righty, folks. Good morning, Canada. We are back with a new question period episode. I like to call it episodes because it really feels like a very sadistic kind of sitcom or reality show. But no, it's not a reality show. It's the reality of our world. It's our politicians, our federally elected, taxpayer-funded government employees that are making a mockery of our system. Well, at least one or two parties are, the Liberals and the NDP. Speaking of Liberals, Justin Trudeau is scheduled to appear in the House of Commons. He's not running away, folks, so you don't need to get yourself a milk carton plastered with Trudeau's face on it, because he's not missing. But what you could do is go down in the description of this live stream and get yourself a Stop the WEF farmers protest sticker if you choose. If not, there's other great options, such as the sticker here on my microphone. Klaus Schwab, who's penetrated Justin Trudeau, which is not a play on words. It's actually something that Klaus Schwab has said about Justin Trudeau, and yet Justin Trudeau keeps running to Daddy Klaus for more WEF bucks. But nonetheless, before we get into the stream, everybody, I want to encourage you all to smash the like button. It does help push the stream out further. Trudeau is scheduled, like I said, to appear live in the House of Commons for question period today. So it's going to be a great debate. So we want to get as many people in here and invested in our politics as we possibly can. And subscribe if you haven't yet already. Now, I don't want to try and sell you too much on the subscription, but oh my God, sorry, I'm coughing because of carbon tax. Subscribing will help us get to 100,000 subscribers, which once you reach that threshold, pushes videos out even further according to the YouTube gods and the algorithm fix. So I would certainly appreciate that. But if you don't want to listen to me, the government wouldn't appreciate you subscribing or liking the videos. So if you don't do it for me, do it because the government doesn't want you to do it. If that's not a good enough reason, I don't even know why you're watching at this point. All right, enough about me. We're going to get into statements by members. There's about 10 minutes left, and then question period will begin. So now's a great time to get your coffee, get your water, get your snacks, get your food, do whatever you got to do. Get yourself comfortable because you don't want to miss the beginning of question period when it starts. So without further ado, here we go, folks. Statements by members.
Every day, feeding our world.
I'm pretty proud of that joke about coughing and saying the carbon tax.
The honourable member for Senate.
I'm a sit-down comedian. What can I say?
Speak about perinatal mental health. The perinatal period begins. Women will experience depression during this period. Children of perinatally depressed mothers are at increased risk of anxiety, depression, ADHD, and autism.
Several longitudinal studies have shown that there is a 70% increase in the risk of depression in adolescents and adults who are the offspring of mothers who suffered from perinatal depression.
Washroom break. Yeah, go drop a Trudeau if you have to.
5 million Canadians aged 15 and over met the diagnostic criteria for a mood, anxiety, or
I got jokes for days.
Use disorder.
I'm a dad. Of course I got jokes.
How much lower that number could be if we ensured rapid access to perinatal mental health services.
Part of a government that began the work last year by investing $857,000 to develop a national clinician guidelines for perinatal mood disorders, and I look forward to seeing what more we can do. Thank you.
The honourable member from Foothills.
Today is Canadian Agriculture Day. It's a time.
Yeah, Canadian Agriculture Day.
Awesome. Producers. Canadian agriculture and agri-food play a critical role in Canada's economic prosperity, producing local quality food for families in Canada and around the world. But it's also important to note the fact that Canadian farmers set the world standard in sustainability and stewardship. In fact, a ton of Canadian wheat can travel around the world 3.5 times before it has the same carbon footprint as wheat grown in Europe. This is an incredible achievement.
What about the same carbon footprint as Trudeau taking a private jet to
farmers are being
Jamaica
with higher carbon taxes and regulations that are based on activism and not science. As conservatives now more than ever, we understand our farm families need advocates, people who will celebrate their accomplishments. I encourage everyone to learn more about where their food comes from and thank those farmers who put quality, local food on our table every day. Happy Canada Day.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Support the farmers. Show your pride. for farmers.
For Mr. Speaker, this Sexual and Reproductive Health Awareness Week, it's important to remember that in recent years...
Can I ask something of you guys?
Women's
It's free, don't worry. Don't worry, it's tax deductible. There's over 500 people in here. Can we try and get 250 likes on the stream? So you can write it off on your taxes.
Feeling safe, free and choice.
I'd really appreciate that, guys. If you, all the people that are filing right now, if they just took the time to hit that like button.
Still in 2024.
It's free to do.
Women and girls in vulnerable situations continue to face violence, and they are judged and discouraged from speaking out. Our government continues to work hard in Canada and many other countries for gender equality, which means respecting and promoting human and
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said, can I ask something of you guys?
Member from
Of you people. We're in Canada. There's no genders. My apologies, people.
Under our Liberal government's leadership, a woman now has more opportunities to chart...
Will you get a tax break if you subscribe?
We have improved access to family planning services and contraception.
Yes.
We have extended parental leave to 18 months.
You get WEF bucks, too.
Providing families with income supports and improving flexibility. We have delivered on a $10 a day childcare plan, allowing women not to have to make the difficult choice between career and family. We have also increased the amount of families receive in the Canada Child Benefit.
I'm on fire today, man.
Inflation. Families can be...
I'm having fun with that. I sure am.
We have been at the forefront of advocating for gender equality and reproductive rights around the world, while the Conservative Party of Canada has spent the last several years bringing forward bills that would limit the choices.
I make myself laugh.
As we recognize this week, let's celebrate the progress that we've made, but let's be vigilant and remind each other not to let our guard down, because what's happening in the U.S. could happen here too. But I vow to all Canadians that we won't let it happen on...
Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have had it with this NDP who continue to bankrupt this country with each passing day. After 8 years of irresponsible leadership, this Prime Minister, who wasted us over $60 billion...
Family's great. Fireball, thanks for asking.
...is now asking Canadians for even more of their...
Holy smokes, guys, we're almost at 250 likes.
...tax, which is set to increase a whopping 23%.
Holy smokes, people kind. We're almost at 250 likes.
...tax will increase prices on everything from food to fuel to home heating, and Canadians are tired of being left out in the cold. Due to the current cost of living crisis, many Canadians have been left wondering how they're going to put food on their table, especially given the average family of four will pay $700 more for groceries in 2024 than they did last year. It's simple. When you tax the farmer who grows the food and you tax the trucker who ships the food, you are taxing the Canadian who buys the food. The Liberals need to pass Bill C-234 in its original form and support the farmers and families who deserve better than a Prime Minister who is simply not worth the cost.
Yeah.
Honourable member from Brampton North South.
Speaker, women across Canada inspire us all. They know what is the best for them and their families. That is why, because of our Liberal policy, women in Brampton and across Canada have the choice to grow a family, go back to work, or start their new businesses knowing they have the affordable childcare support they need.
Honestly, the affordable childcare policy is
and accessible daycare centers. However, the
it's pretty clutch.
House called the National Childcare Plan.
I ain't gonna lie, $10 a day childcare. It sounds pretty good.
Childcare,
but
taking this choice away from
it's not effective
and placing a
for everybody.
Strain on Canadian families.
That's the shitty part.
Coast to coast. Women in Canada should not have to choose between a family or career. I am proud of the investment our government has made to allow women to have a choice. Let us continue to break barriers for women in Canada and around the world. When we empower women, we empower everyone, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government...
Can you imagine if that statement was made about men? When you empower men, you empower everybody? Come on, man. Come on.
Struggling to make ends meet. Yet somehow the Prime Minister found over $60 million for his ArriveCan app. With inflation eating away at earnings and families having to cut back on gas, heat and groceries, this Prime Minister wants to increase the carbon tax by another 23% on April 1st. It's all part of the Liberal NDP plan to quadruple the tax on the backs of hard-working Canadians. In my riding, the Lacombe Legion paid an extra $2,000 last year just for the carbon tax. Wow. This money, which should be used to improve the lives of veterans and honor the memory of our fallen, has instead been funneled to this government so they can pay off their friends at ArriveCan. It's time to admit that this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
The honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Auditor General released her report into the ArriveCan scandal. This damning report shows that the Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption. This app should have only cost 80 grand, but ended up costing taxpayers $60 million.
That we know of.
Worse, 12 million of those dollars went to Liberal consultants that didn't even work on the app. In addition, this app sent more than 10,000 Canadians unjustifiably into quarantine. ArriveCan reeks of corruption that goes straight to the top. But Mr. Speaker, at Ethics Committee today, it was verified that even emails that were deleted to cover up corruption can be accessed with authorization. It's time for answers. That's why Conservatives are calling on the RCMP to expand their investigation into ArriveCan so that those involved can face charges. The question is now, will the Prime Minister comply or is he implicated?
There you go. Folks, we are almost done statements by members. You can possibly see Justin Trudeau in the bottom left of the screen. Pierre Poilievre is going to be tuning in right now. He's just dropping a Trudeau in the bathroom. Before we get into question period, we have over 1,100, 1,200 live viewers right now and 281, 280-ish likes on the stream. Can we try and get that up to like 500? It's absolutely free. It's tax deductible. You can write it off. I would super appreciate that. And everybody would, as a matter of fact. Everybody would appreciate that, except the Liberals, which is an incentive to really hit it.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. This Sexual and Reproductive Health Awareness Week, I would like to make Canadians aware of the importance of seeing sexual health in the same light as other aspects of health. We must also continue to defend women's right to family and reproductive planning. As mothers, I can assure you that the arrival of a child remains the most beautiful miracle in the world, but we want every family to be able to choose the right moment to welcome what is most precious to them, their child. And we want every child to be welcomed into a family that is ready to cherish him or her. Healthy sexual and reproductive health also means educating our young people, raising awareness of sexually transmitted diseases, unwanted pregnancies, and the notion of consent is necessary if we are to enable them to be responsible and prudent. Finally, I'd like to thank the organizations that work to combat the stigma and discrimination that sometimes surrounds sexual and reproductive health and that provide support to those who need it.
The honourable member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, there are some incredible challenges facing Canadian farmers. Changing markets and price fluctuation in commodities, rising debt levels, climate change-driven extreme weather events. Despite these challenges, farmers in Canada continue to confront and overcome adversity while showcasing the innovative ways they're leading us into the 21st century.
Is the NDP about to advocate for farmers?
Farmers are certainly not fans of the Ottawa Knows Best approach. Instead, and as New Democrats, we want to partner with our farmers to help them build their resilience against climate change and confront the corporate greed that is driving up their input costs to unsustainable levels. To help our farmers, we need a government that is ready for action on a sustainable agriculture strategy, a critical input strategy, and a mandatory grocery code of conduct. Today is Canada's Agriculture Day. On behalf of the NDP caucus, I hope we can all take a moment to celebrate both the hardworking Canadian farmers who grow the food we love and the essential contributions of agriculture to our nation's prosperity and well-being.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. In hockey, there's one event that shines brightly, a tournament where talented youth take to the ice with dreams in their eyes, the Quebec City International Pee Wee Hockey Tournament. Each year, this emblematic competition brings together teams from the four corners of the world, offering young players a unique opportunity to measure themselves against the world elite of their age group. But behind every pass and shot lie quiet heroes, the volunteers, parents, and organizers. Their invaluable dedication is the driving force that keeps this tournament shining year after year. So thank you to them for their invaluable contribution, and thank you to the organizing committee and its general manager, Patrick Dom. Have fun, make friends, and make excellent memories.
The honourable member from Chilliwack Hope.
The Liberal NDP government's ArriveCan app is not worth the cost or the corruption. The Auditor General has now confirmed that what should have cost taxpayers $80,000 ended up costing at least $60 million, with $12 million of that going to well-connected consultants who did no work on the app. But the final true costs may never be known because this government's record keeping was so outrageously poor that the Auditor General said it was impossible to calculate all the costs associated with this boondoggle. And what did this colossal waste of tax dollars result in? At least 10,000 Canadians being erroneously sent into quarantine. The Prime Minister's ArriveCan app is not worth the cost or the corruption. Conservatives are calling on the RCMP to expand their investigation into this scandal based on the revelations in the Auditor General's report. So will the Prime Minister join us, or will the costly coalition continue to cover up this corruption?
I think we all know the answer.
Honourable Member for Glengarry Prescott Russell.
Today is Canada's Agricultural Day. Today and every day we recognize our farmers and
keep our farmers' name
resilience
out your fucking mouth, you liberal.
The Liberal government is committed to support hard work.
I've been waiting 16 minutes to say that.
Our rural communities and drive our local economies. Since 2015, we've made critical investments to help farmers adapt to climate change and sustainable practices. While Conservatives were cutting the agricultural budget, we increased it by 25%. Business risk management programs are more attractive and foster resilience and innovation in the face of environmental challenges. At the same time, agricultural exports have surged from $56 billion to over $92 billion, showcasing Canada's reputation as a trusted global supplier. Aujourd'hui, j'invite mes collègues.
Today, I invite my colleagues to join me in celebrating the contributions of our farmers and their dedication to feeding our nation. From the potato farmer in PEI to the blueberry farmer in BC, thank you for all that you do.
Oral questions. Questions orales. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, soon to be Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister and his ArriveCan app are not worth the cost or the corruption. After the revelations of corruption, waste, and so on by the Auditor General yesterday, I wrote to the RCMP to ask them to expand the criminal investigation into the ArriveCan scandal. The Prime Minister has a history of blocking criminal investigations. Will he allow the RCMP to investigate him and his ArriveCan scandal? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The COVID-19 pandemic was something that happens once, not just once in a generation, but once in a century. And all the decisions we made were with a view to protecting Canadians. Clearly, we all expect the rules to be followed by the public service and by others, and we expect the RCMP and the authorities to do their job. But we should recall that this is the government that is concerned about border security. The Conservative Party keeps voting against assistance for CBSA, against...
Bro, CBSA is embezzling millions of dollars for you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Well, when it comes to corruption, Mr. Speaker, the revelations yesterday are the following. One, that the company that benefited drafted the terms of the contract. Second, two people working in the basement of a house received $20 million under a contract for an app that should have only cost $80,000. There was also whiskey given to officials. Will the Prime Minister respect the independence of the criminal investigation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we will always encourage and cooperate with authorities in doing their job, and that's what they'll do. The public service must also follow the rules, and if those aren't followed, there will be consequences. We welcome with open arms the Auditor General's report. It's important to ensure that taxpayer money is being managed appropriately, even at a time when
that's funny coming from him.
Protect Canadians from coast to coast. We still need to make sure the rules have been followed.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This Prime Minister and his Arrive scam are not worth the cost or the corruption. After yesterday's Auditor General revelations of corruption, waste and mismanagement, I have written the RCMP asking them to expand their criminal investigation into the Prime Minister's Arrive scam. He has a track record of blocking criminal investigations. He tried to protect SNC-Lavalin from prosecution. He blocked the RCMP from investigating his illegal vacation to Billionaire Island. Will he stay out of the way, or will he again try to block the RCMP's criminal investigation into Arrive scam?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The COVID-19 pandemic was a once-in-a-generation, even once-in-a-century occurrence in which every decision we took was designed to protect Canadians' lives. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, even in a situation like that, there are rules that need to be followed, and we expect, and all Canadians expect, public servants to follow those rules, and we will, of course, encourage the RCMP to do its work, but it doesn't take politicians, even leaders of the opposition, to tell the RCMP to do their job. They do their job, Mr. Speaker, and they do it well.
Freeland in the back clapping.
They do their job unless the Prime Minister blocks them from doing their job, like he did in his criminal offense,
which is what he's been doing for months.
The crime of accepting a gift from someone who was seeking a government contract from him. He blocked the RCMP from investigating him. And COVID-19 is something he saw as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fill the pockets of his friends, whether it was the WE scandal, in which his family received $500,000, or whether it was Frank Bayliss, or now the Arrive scam. Will he stay out of the way and let the police investigate him and his corrupt government in Arrive scam?
Yeah, man, he's blocking all of the investigations and then saying he supports them.
Speaker, even a few years later in the pandemic, we see the Conservative leader reverts to type. While we were focusing on protecting Canadians every possible way we could, they were peddling conspiracy theories, Mr. Speaker, about vaccinations, about what have you. So while he continues to make personal attacks, we're going to continue to make sure we're delivering for Canadians. And yes, we will make sure that all rules are followed, and there are consequences for people who broke the laws or broke the rules. But we will continue to be there for Canadians while he plays partisan games.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Proof that he's not worth the cost or the corruption. He's now calling the Auditor General a conspiracy theorist. Now that she's revealed that his Arrive scam went from $80,000 to at least $60 million and counting, that two insiders got $20 million working from their home basement from this Prime Minister, that top Liberal government officials accepted high-end whiskeys and dinners in exchange for contracts that they let the contractors write for themselves. So once again, will he stay out of the way and let the police investigate his government, or will he try to block it again?
There you go, there you go.
Minister.
Let's see what kind of bullshit he says.
The opposition needs to work on his French. I think he just needs to work on his listening skills, because in French, 2 answers ago, I complimented and thanked the Auditor General for her work in ensuring that rules are followed and processes have consequences if they are misdone.
Like the Emergencies Act?
We know that even during a pandemic, we need to be stepping up to protect people along the rules. That's why there will be consequences for anyone who broke those rules or those laws, while we continue to do everything we need to do to deliver for Canadians, to support people in their daily lives, and build a better future for all Canadians.
Build back better.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly.
That didn't really answer the question.
My colleague from Montcalm
I don't know about you guys.
made a proposal in connection with medical assistance in dying that would allow the final decision to be delayed when it comes to mental illness in general, while at the same time accommodating patients or future patients in terms of advance requests and in keeping with Quebec's desires. In that context,
biggest mental illness in Canada is Trudeau.
That's currently before the House.
He's a plague.
Possible. Would the Prime Minister vote in favor of the member of from Montcalm's amendment? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we all know that medical assistance in dying, or MAID, is a difficult and very personal choice that individuals and families have to make in very difficult times in their lives. We know as a government and as a parliament that we are responsible for ensuring that vulnerable people are protected, but at the same time that people's choices and rights are respected should they choose to access MAID. We will continue the conversation, including with the Government of Quebec, to find the best path to follow for everyone. The Honourable Member for
Death and mutilation. Well, that's the path they want.
Perhaps he should be talking to us. We're right here in this Parliament. This is an opportunity to avoid problems for him with the conservative right wing, the religious right wing, and perhaps even some people in his own caucus. This is an opportunity to show that here in this Parliament we can find common ground and respect choices that are difficult and personal without it taking forever. This is not a time to do anything other than making the compassionate and humane decisions. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the Bloc Québécois for contributing to this debate in a compassionate and thoughtful way. This is the type of conversation we should keep having here in this Parliament. How can we best protect Canadians? How can we best respect everyone's choices and decisions? So we will continue to work on this. We'll continue to work with the provinces that are involved.
Oh, what a
and we will ensure that
answer.
All Canadians' well-being is at the heart of whatever decisions we make in this very complex and difficult file.
The Liberal-appointed housing advocate gave this government a failing grade today. She says homelessness encampments are a manifestation of how broken our housing and homeless system is. She describes it as life or death crisis. While this Prime Minister says he could have and should have done more to build housing, it shows how out of touch he is. So will the Prime Minister take this crisis seriously, follow the recommendations, and ensure people have a safe place to call home?
Cut off the coalition, buddy.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I very much welcome the interests and the efforts of the New Democratic Party to support us in everything that we're doing on delivering on housing. We recently signed housing accelerator agreements with Quebec, with Nunavut, with cities across the country to unlock over 500,000 new homes. We introduced a suite of new measures to unlock the construction of over 600,000 new apartments. We cracked down on short-term rentals to unlock up to 30,000 more apartments. We introduced a mortgage charter. We're continuing to step up on measures to counter homelessness, which is something that far too many Canadians are experiencing during this difficult
Increasing taxes helps fight homelessness. Good job, buddy.
For Burnaby South.
Heard the housing advocate gave a failing grade to their government.
According to the Liberal-appointed housing advocate, homeless encampments are a manifestation of how broken our housing and homelessness system is. She calls it a life and death crisis. Meanwhile, all the Prime Minister has to say is that he woulda, coulda, shoulda done more.
Yeah.
Will the Prime Minister...
That's called accountability.
To nothing but the advice of corporate landlords and help renters in this country. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to listen to community organizations, to municipal partners and provincial partners. We will continue to work hand in hand. We're signing agreements to accelerate housing construction in Quebec and all across the country to have more than 50,000 new houses built and 600,000 new apartment units. We're still dealing with the problem of short-term rentals.
He doesn't even know his policies that well that he has to read them.
And people in vulnerable situations, but we still have a lot of work.
Oh, let's go, Melissa.
Of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, we know that corruption is a feature and not a bug. SNC Lavalin, We Charity, and now the Prime Minister's Arrive scam at millions that Canadians won't get back. The grift and the mismanagement run so deep that the auditors couldn't even figure out how much got shipped off to Liberal insiders. So after what we learned yesterday, will the Prime Minister join us in calling for the RCMP to get to the bottom of all of it, every single dollar?
Oh, wow. I can't believe she just called it a grift.
For Public Works.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme l'avons...
Oh, yeah, the vampire. Let's go to his French.
We welcome the Auditor General's report, and we'll follow all of her recommendations when it comes to ArriveCan. As the Minister for Public Safety said yesterday, some of the recommendations in the report
the translator almost said Arrive scam,
including implementing new measures to guarantee that tasks and deliverables are clearly defined in professional services contracts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thornhill.
Minister, the call is coming from inside of the House. They want Canadians to believe that they unknowingly got robbed blind by their own Liberal insiders and that they are going to get to the bottom of the Prime Minister's Arrive scam app, which, by the way, didn't work. We didn't need, and where 75% of contractors did no work but had time to buy the government whiskey. He is not worth the cost, and he is not worth the corruption, and Canadians want their $60 million back. No one trusts them to investigate themselves, so
I'll take some of that money back.
Stand up right here, right now, and call in the Mounties.
Yeah, bring them in.
Minister of
Load them up. Single file.
Thank you to our colleague for the question. As we said yesterday, we thank again the Auditor General for her recommendations on the review of the ArriveCan application. Some of the report's recommendations have already been implemented, including the introduction of new measures to ensure the tasks and deliverables are clearly defined in professional services contracts. Our departments take very seriously their duty to optimize resources.
Exactly.
The honourable member from Barrie-Innisfil.
Arrive scam is just like the Prime Minister, not worth the cost and not worth the corruption. The investigation and damning report issued by the Auditor General on ArriveCan even shocked her. But really, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, no one should be shocked by the level of incompetence and wasteful spending Canadians have seen from this Prime Minister. Now, a reasonable thinking person could conclude from the report that Arrive scam has reached a level of criminality. Yes. Will the Prime Minister join Conservatives and call on the RCMP to expand an investigation into Arrive scam based on the revelations in the Auditor General's report?
Yes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
As we've said in this House time and time again, any misconduct in the procurement process is unacceptable. We accept that the President of the CBSA has initiated internal audits and issued some initial reports. Mr. Speaker, she has also referred some of the concerning reports to the RCMP, but members opposite should know it's not politicians who direct the RCMP, it's the RCMP who does this work, and the RCMP will set the mandate for wherever the case may lead, and we will accept that work.
I'm sure.
Member from
what if it's jail time or resigning?
The question was a simple one, really, Mr. Speaker. But after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, who in this place or across Canada expects a proper response from a Prime Minister who's not worth the cost and not worth the corruption? The AG's report causes a reasonable person to conclude that what happened with Arrive scam has reached a level of criminality that must be investigated. So I'm going to ask again, will the Prime Minister join Conservatives and call on the RCMP to expand an investigation into Arrive scam based on the revelations
I love that they keep saying Arrive scam.
General's report?
The Honourable Parliament.
I love it so much.
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we obviously accept the Auditor General's report. We thank her.
Okay, then resign.
There are obviously some concerning allegations being initiated. This is precisely why CBSA initiated the audit. This is precisely why they then referred some materials to the RCMP. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter how many times the Conservatives say it. Politicians do not direct police investigations investigations. It's the RCMP who will do this work, and we trust that they will follow the evidence. And again, procurement with any misconduct will come with consequences.
Take accountability and resign.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Auditor General confirmed our worst suspicions. The ArriveCan app cost $60 million instead of $80,000. And she said that the files are in such a shoddy state that it's impossible to calculate the true cost. This is unheard of. We need to know, is this a matter of gross incompetence or corruption? Will the government ask the RCMP to investigate further? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a number of things we know. The RCMP operates at arm's length, and as the Prime Minister just said, we have confidence in their ability to do their job. Secondly, the Auditor General did indeed reveal some shocking conduct in the public service, and this is undesirable despite how urgent it was to take action and provide assistance to millions of Canadians. Many of the recommendations have already been implemented and others will be shortly. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, seems to me that when you want to shed light on things, a simple yes or no answer would do. We also learned that GC Strategies got $20 million, and there was no paperwork to confirm that anything was requested or delivered. And GC Strategies even got to set the terms of their contract. If the government has nothing to hide, they should say, yes, we want an RCMP investigation, and we want the scope of that investigation to be expanded.
Reminder, everybody, to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already.
Speaker,
there's a lot of live viewers in here. We almost have 4,000.
In free democracy, it's not the government
and a lot of you are not subscribed.
That dictate to the police how they should do their jobs. That's not how things work in a democracy like ours that we're fortunate enough to live in. But public servants have responsibilities. The Auditor General did find shortcomings in the work done by the public service, and this is something that we need to take seriously. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, medical assistance in dying, or MAID, is about free choice. The role of government is not to decide for others. The role of government is to provide the conditions for free and informed
Let's
choice.
clip that and replay that as a ringtone.
Simply don't have to ask for it. The National Assembly is unanimous. Quebec is ready and has its own legislation. Will the federal government amend the criminal code to allow advance requests for people who are suffering? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Mr. Speaker, I have deep respect for the crucial work that Quebec has done.
We're almost at 80,000 subscribers, folks.
Canada has just...
If everyone who's watching the live stream right now
that's for a
who
good
isn't
reason.
subscribed hits that subscribe button, we could very well
standards
hit 80,000.
What is criminal and what is not. There is no easy solution that would allow for Quebec to have an exemption from the criminal code in this area.
It's tax
We will
deductible.
undertake to work with Quebec to contemplate the next steps. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Quebec would not have to ask for an exemption if Ottawa had applied the majority recommendations on advance requests tabled a year ago by the special committee. Today, Quebec is ready, and patients shouldn't have to suffer because of the government's foot dragging. The federal government has two choices. They can either offer this exception from the criminal code immediately or introduce legislation on advance requests. Will they make the humane choice and show some compassion? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Mr. Speaker, MAID is a deeply personal and complex choice. We're trying
so they should offer it to the mentally ill to make their own decision.
Jesus, man. We have taken an approach from the outset that is cautious, and we owe Canadians and Quebecers an approach that is thoughtful and cautious. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Let's recap the emergency account situation. If we project the figures, nearly 150,000 SMEs were unable to repay. Nearly 200,000 companies have had to take on debt to repay. In addition, some 50,000 entrepreneurs are still looking for refinancing. The federal government has a way of knowing the precise state of affairs and ensuring as few bankruptcies as possible. It could do so by examining SME files case by case. That's what we've been calling for from the start. Why do they always refuse? The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, almost 80% of small businesses repaid their emergency loans. Given that it's Black History Month, I'd like to point out...
You're not allowed to mention that.
Black Entrepreneurship Program. That's a historic investment of $266 million, which to date has helped over 9,000 entrepreneurs. The Government of Canada has approved some $50 million in assistance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
False.
Whoa.
The $60 million Arrive scam app is just like the Prime Minister after 8 years. Not worth the cost, not worth the corruption. And what did Canadians receive for their hard-earned tax dollars? An app that was 750 times over budget, required 177 updates, forced 10,000 people into quarantine by error, and caused chaos at our borders, ruining any chance of a tourism recovery. Will the PM join us and call on the RCMP to expand its investigation based on yesterday's shocking report from the Auditor General?
Tourism in Canada, man, it's like non-existent anymore. Who the hell wants to visit this country?
Speaker, any misconduct during a procurement process is completely unacceptable. This is precisely why when the CBSA learned of some irregularities, they immediately initiated an internal audit. Based on some of that work, Mr. Speaker, they referred some of these elements to the RCMP. It's unfortunate when situations like this occur, but Mr. Speaker, it is also the fact that the CBSA has been following the process to ensure that something like this can never happen again and that any wrongdoing comes with consequences.
The honourable member...
Like jail time?
Speaker, fact. The headline of the Auditor General's report on the disastrous Liberal Arrive scam app said it best. Glaring disregard for basic management and contracting practices. This report is a metaphor of 8 years of Liberal mismanagement, incompetence, and disregard for hardworking Canadians. This app is just like the Prime Minister after 8 years.
Not worth the cost.
Not worth the corruption. Again, I will ask, will the PM join us and call on the RCMP to expand its investigation based on the revelations of yesterday's shocking Auditor General's report?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
This is the way.
Of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, it is not politicians who direct investigations with the RCMP. And the RCMP will determine the scope as the evidence permits. Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that any wrongdoing and misconduct in procurement will come with consequences. We have confidence that the CBSA is completing this work. They're doing initial audits, and as I've said, the RCMP is looking into the matters where necessary.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic. Mr. Speaker, imagine for a moment that you award an emergency contract to fix a leak in the roof of your official residence at the farm. You hire a contractor who tells you it'll cost $20,000. You give him the contract, he starts work, and then sends you a first invoice for $500,000 with no explanation. Are you going to pay it? No questions asked? Well, that's exactly what happened with the Prime Minister's ArriveCan app. The Auditor General saw it, the Ombudsman saw it, and no one in the PMO saw it? It's hard to believe, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister join us and ask the RCMP to expand its investigation to include all of the allegations? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've already said a number of times today and yesterday, we thank the Auditor General for her report. We note duly the shocking revelations. We understand that the circumstances were urgent, but that's no excuse. for breaking the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Mégantic-l'Érable.
Monsieur le Président, le Premier ministre.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. The Prime Minister's ArriveCan app has forced the quarantine of 10,000 Canadians in error. The application was supposed to cost $80,000, and now it's
That's insane, man. It's so hard to wrap our head around that.
The families waiting in line at food banks deserve better answers, and the workers whose taxes are going to go up again are angry at having to foot the bill. Will the Prime Minister, who's not worth the cost, commit to giving back to families who paid for work that was never delivered the money he wasted on the ArriveCan app? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague surely understands our answer now. We've repeated it many times. We thank the Auditor General for her report. We take note of the errors and missteps mentioned in her reports. Many of her recommendations we've already started implementing, and the rest we will continue to implement in the upcoming weeks. We acted in an urgent emergency situation. We had to protect the lives of thousands of Canadians across Canada, but unfortunately, things were not done at the standards we expect of public servants.
Member from Nunavut.
The Supreme Court's decision affirmed what we already know. Indigenous peoples have the right to make decisions about their own children, youth, and families. The federal government must ensure Indigenous children receive the care they need without delays. Indigenous Services plans to sunset over $7 billion in programs like Jordan's Principle and Inuit Child First Initiative. Will the minister commit to reversing her decision to make these cuts and invest in the programs that Indigenous children and youth need?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Paul Murphy, Secretary to the Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for her question and her accurate statement of the law.
What?
It was a big victory not only for Indigenous people, it was a big victory for Canada on Friday. Not only does the case say that Indigenous self-determination is available for Indigenous youth, but it also interweaves like a braid Indigenous laws.
That was an intrusive thought. I'm sorry for saying that out loud.
Legislative reconciliation in this House. I think everyone would be better served if they are able to read this case and reflect on it in this House.
Well said. The Honourable Member.
I gotta learn to mute my mic.
Mr. Speaker, last Sunday the community of Carman, Manitoba witnessed a tragedy when a mother and her 3 children and her niece were murdered with her husband as the main suspect. This reminds us that we desperately need shelters and safe housing for women and families and mental health supports to prevent femicide. But this government has defunded women's shelters while mental health needs continue to go unmet. Will the minister increase support for shelters and mental health services to stop violence against women and children?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, it's not lost on us the scale of the tragedy that took place, and we endeavour to continue to do our part to see that justice is done. But it's important as we go forward that we continue to invest.
Bro, how's this guy even have a job? He lost 1 million people.
That prevents this kind of incident from happening. Our programs do provide support to shelters and transitional housing, in particular for women fleeing violence, and we're going to look for additional opportunities to make the investments necessary to continue to build out the network of homes that will help prevent these kinds of tragedies in the future.
L'honorable député de Pontiac.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac.
Speaker, affordable daycare is so important. It's essential to provide women with the freedom to choose whether they decide to stay home, raise their kid, or pursue their career, but in most cases, balancing both. But women in my riding, Mr. Speaker, tell me that they have trouble finding spot in the daycare. So can the Minister of Family update this House on exactly what the discussion she has with provinces to ensure the success of the $10 daycare?
The Minister of Families and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Canada-wide system is making life more affordable for Canadian families by delivering on $10 a day childcare in now 7 provinces or territories and 50% reduction across the country. As fees have reduced, of course, demand has increased for these spots. And we've seen an increase in the number of spots available, with 82,000 new spaces announced by the provinces and territories. The provinces and territories signed on to help build this system together, and we will work with them to hold them account to do so. Thank you, Mr.
The honourable member from Edmonton Riverbend.
So the Prime Minister found over $60 million for his ArriveCan app, but he continues to want to increase the carbon tax by 23% on April 1st. And now we are seeing the far-left NDP Alberta leadership candidates weigh in, and I quote, "Nobody is on board with what the Prime Minister did with the federal carbon tax. He absolutely broke trust and broke confidence. After 8 years of failure, how can he continue to raise this carbon tax on Canadians?"
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Parliamentary Budget
The dumbest job.
reiterated many times, 8 out of 10 Canadians get a bit more from carbon pricing back than what they pay. And carbon pricing works, Mr. Speaker. It helps reduce pollution in Canada, something that the Conservative Party campaigned on during the 2021 election campaign. The difference between them and us is that on this side of the House, we are serious about fighting climate change and working with Canadians to help them face affordability issues.
Just a reminder, folks, if you haven't yet already, please subscribe. We're almost at 80,000.
Well, I have more, Mr. Speaker. Another Alberta leadership candidate said, and I quote, "There's no way people can be on board with a federal plan, even when the Prime Minister isn't on board, when he's playing games with it." And another one said, "We must move away from a consumer carbon tax." And another one said, "The federal carbon levy is dead." When he loses the support of the far-left Alberta NDP, this minister must know he has a problem. Will he cancel his carbon tax before April 1st, once and for all?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, since we're talking about Alberta, I wonder if the Conservative Party of Canada and its leader support the freeze that the provincial government has put on $30 billion worth of investment. Thousands of jobs are at risk in Alberta because of the reckless decision of the Premier to freeze renewable energy development, the fastest sector for energy development in this country, Mr. Speaker. What has the Conservative Party have to say about that? Nothing, because they don't care about economic development, they don't care about fighting climate change, and they don't care about helping Canadians.
Quite the opposite, man. They want to make life better for Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wasted more than $60 million on his ArriveCan scam app, and he's going to make Canadians pay more by quadrupling the carbon tax. It's going up 23% on April the 1st. And so after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, it's no surprise, but this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Why do Canadians have to foot the bill for this government's corrupt spending?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Right now in Canada, Mr. Speaker, we have a province in Alberta that has to be talking about rationing water next summer because of climate impacts. We have atmospheric rivers in British Columbia that is affecting thousands of people, ski resorts that have to close down. We're seeing the cost of climate change that have not doubled, not tripled, that have increased 10 times over the last decade. What is the answer of the Conservative Party of Canada? Make pollution free again, Mr. Speaker. Let the biggest, most profitable and polluting countries get off the hook, not on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Bro, taxes aren't going to fix the weather.
Colleagues, it's important once again to remind ourselves that when we take the floor...
You want to save on taxes? Buy some stickers. Link in the description. Send some super chats. Lower your income.
Members to please restrain themselves.
These liberals are just are so stupid, man.
Respective whips to respect members who have the floor and who are asking questions or who are answering them. The honourable member from Sarnia.
Respect the Nazis in the gallery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians have been forced to pay through the nose for everything after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government. Not only did they give contractors $20 million for doing no work on the ArriveCan app, but the Auditor General says this $80,000 app cost over $60 million of taxpayer money.
That we know of.
They're increasing the carbon tax on April the 1st. So why should Canadians have to foot the bill for this government's corrupt overspending?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, in the last election campaign, all of the honourable members across from us went around to their neighbourhoods.
Who is this thumb?
Lambton and elsewhere with pamphlets with Mr. O'Toole on the cover. Remember the black T-shirt? And what was therein?
Thanks for the super, Julianne. Trudeau needs to go. I appreciate that.
I ask you to follow the instruction of your whips who are...
Thanks for the super chats, guys. It's hard to keep up with everything. I'm
going to ask...
trying to enjoy the show just like everyone.
Start again from the top.
I appreciate the support, though.
Mr. Speaker, in the last election campaign, all of the colleagues on the other side of the House went around their neighbourhoods, around their ridings. They had nice glossy brochures with Mr. O'Toole on the cover. He had a nice black T-shirt on. What was in there? A price on pollution, Mr. Speaker. A price on pollution. All of these members went around their neighbourhoods committing to put a price on pollution as part of a plan to fight climate change. Why did we believe Conservatives then, and why should we believe them now?
Make Canada great again. Let's get that going in the chat, folks. Make Canada great again. Spam that in the chat. MCGA.
Thank you.
It drives the Liberals nuts.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. The Liberals will not be able to hide from this ArriveCan scandal so easily. A simple app that should have cost $80,000. Well, they ended up spending $60 million. $60 million to GC Strategies, which didn't end up actually doing anything. They didn't offer any services. Worse still, the Auditor General has confirmed that this occurred with the support of state employees. Recently, the three involved ministers have been passing the hot potato around, but when are we going to get answers about ArriveCan? Canadians deserve answers and accountability. The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank my colleague for her question. She has heard the answer many times now. We thank the Auditor General for her work. We acknowledge the major issues that she raised. We acted in a time of crisis. That is not an excuse for the lack of information and the lack of record keeping, the lack of record sharing. But thankfully, many of the Auditor General's recommendations have already been implemented. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Quebecers don't understand how it's possible to have a 750% cost overrun without any minister cluing in. A handful of people got $60 million of taxpayer money. The pandemic cannot explain such a total lack of competence regarding basic management. How is it possible to waste $60 million? And how many other contracts like this did the government turn a blind eye to? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the middle of the pandemic, hundreds of people were dying of COVID. Billions of dollars were lost weekly. Economic losses. It was very difficult to transit the border, but we made it possible to keep the border open so that essential medication and product and equipment could transit the border for Quebec's businesses and Canada's businesses. But there was a lack of record keeping. There was a lack of thoroughness from some public servants. We acknowledge that, and it is totally unacceptable. I ask.
Hey, folks, we are inches away from 80,000 subscribers. I hate to pause the stream because we got some momentum, but there's over 3,000 people in here. If 1,000 people or several hundred people just hit that subscribe button, it's going to put us past that threshold, and we're going to get more people watching this clown show. I know it's super annoying. I understand, but it's very important for Canadians and people around the world to actually be aware of these debates and the policies that are being debated. Thank you. I would appreciate it.
The member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, to please keep some control during answers.
I wonder why the Prime Minister's priority is higher taxes and not food affordability.
Let's go. Biggest advocate for farmers.
ArriveCan app, but he needs to quadruple the carbon tax on farmers and food. We are hearing the pleas from Canadian families who want to axe the tax to make food affordable. I was in Sudbury this week meeting with food banks who are at a breaking point as demand has doubled and is rising. There's a common-sense Conservative Bill 234, which will give a carbon tax carve-out for farmers and lower the price of food. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost, but will he cancel his plans to increase the carbon tax on April 1st so Canadians can feed themselves?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker,
Speaker.
Finally asking a question about the economy because it gives me the chance to share some good news. In January, thanks to the hard work of Canadians, Canada created 37,000 new jobs. Wages in Canada have been outpacing inflation for the past 12 months.
Right on.
And unemployment fell to 5.7%. That is lower than it was at any time that Stephen Harper was Prime Minister.
Wow.
The only thing Conservatives know how to do is kill jobs.
That's pretty good.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Here's a number that most Canadians care about. 2 million Canadians going to food bank every single month. But today is Canadian Agriculture Day, and how do the Liberals celebrate? By increasing the carbon tax 23% on April 1st. But it gets worse. We now know that the amendments to 234 pushed through by Liberal-appointed senators will increase costs on farmers $200 million. This Conservative common-sense bill in its original form will save farmers $1 billion by 2030. Wow. For Canada Agriculture Day, will the Prime Minister celebrate with me and axe this tax on farmers to make food more affordable?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate my honourable...
Oh, sit down, Colonel.
Being a farmer on Canada Agriculture Day and being part of a government that has
he looks like
environmental plan.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Very proud. It's so important, and farmers understand we have to take care of the land, and we must have an environmental plan. And as far as the price on food, and the Agriculture Committee, Tyler McCann of the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute indicated to the committee members on agriculture that there's no data to support carbon pricing is resulting in an increase in food prices.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Lefjord. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wasted $60 million on his corrupt ArriveCan app. And now...
That's insane.
He's asking Canadians for even more money through the carbon tax, which the Bloc wants to radically increase, by the way. After 8 years of this government, everything costs more. But worse still, the Bloc Québécois supports Liberal policies. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister confirm that he will scrap the carbon tax so that Canadians can breathe a little more? The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind my honourable colleague that the
this guy, Harry Pot smoker.
The St. Lawrence is still in Quebec, and in Quebec, the provincial system applies. They have a cap-and-trade system, which was implemented well before the federal carbon pricing system. That's what applies in Quebec, and that system in Quebec is working well to reduce Quebec's emissions. The Bloc Québécois didn't implement it, nor did the government. The government of Quebec implemented that system, and in fact, many Conservative members voted in favor of Quebec's system.
The Honourable Member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that sexual and reproductive health care encompasses mental health care, which is always important, but especially so for women during their reproductive lives. Knowing what an exciting but also stressful time it can be for a new mother and how a mother's well-being affects not only her but also her newborn and other family members, could the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions and Associate Minister of Health explain how our government is supporting women who choose motherhood by addressing perinatal mental health?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Aurora Oak Ridges. We all know
she's the Minister for Mental Health and Addiction.
My message to new parents who might be struggling: you do not have to carry this burden alone. I want to thank the Canadian Perinatal.
Remember the last one, the 80-year-old cat lady?
All of our partners working to develop national standards for a perinatal mental health strategy. We're supporting families, Mr. Speaker, by creating guidance materials and advice for healthcare professionals and individuals that may face poor mental health during the perinatal period. We are with you and will do everything we can to ensure families have access to quality mental health when they need it and where they need it.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough, Kawartha Lakes.
This Prime Minister is not worth the cost of the suffering he's causing. The Payne family operates Asphodel Sheet Company. They were recognized as Farm Family of the Year in Peterborough County. Now, the carbon tax is set to increase 23% on April 1st, and it is truly hurting them. The kids don't know what's going to happen to their family farm. So Katie, who's 15, Jolene, who's 13, and Lucy, who's 9, asked me to ask the Prime Minister this. Why is the Canadian government making it so difficult for the agriculture industry to do their job of feeding the country?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to read a quote to you from Glenn White, who was the former Vice President of National Farmers Union. And I quote, "Farmers will be among the hardest hit if we don't act to slash greenhouse gas emissions and stabilize the climate. For this reason, to protect farmers, the NFU supports pollution pricing, Mr. Speaker. It is an important policy tool to reduce the harmful emission fueling the climate crisis and threatening farms and food supplies."
The Honourable Member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, we have devastating news today out of Bay of Quinte. Cascades, a company that has been operating a plant that's been in existence in Quinte West for 100 years, is closing its doors and axing 230 jobs because of high inflation and interest rates under 8 years of this Liberal NDP government. Now Canadians who already face high costs to eat and heat their homes have to worry about a paycheck, and people in Belleville, still reeling from a major overdose epidemic, now have to worry about unemployment. When will this government fix the budget, cut inflation, and cut interest rates so companies don't have to close and employees don't have to lose their jobs?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker. The most important thing to every Canadian family is having a job. And every time someone is a disaster for that family. That's why we were so glad to see the strong job recovery across Canada.
Oh, they keep messing with their mic.
More jobs since before COVID. It's also why we have support in place, like early learning and childcare, like a social safety net that the Conservatives would cut.
Honourable Member from Bay of Quinte.
Speaker, that tone-deaf answer will give little to the residents in Quinte West who've just lost their jobs. Let's give a real reality.
Holy shit.
What's happening in Canada right now? Over the last 4 months, TD has slashed 3,000 jobs. Canadian Tire has slashed 3% of its workforce. Enbridge has slashed 650 jobs. Rona has slashed 300 jobs. Manulife slashed 250 jobs. After 8 years of this high-spending Liberal NDP government, the only job Canadians want to see slashed is that Prime Minister. When will this government...
Holy smokes, man.
And cut interest rates so Canadians can keep their job.
Wow. Drop some W's in the chat, folks. That was good. That was good.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting the most vulnerable among us. Since we have formed government, 2.3 million Canadians are out of poverty. Poverty in Canada was at 14.5% when the Conservatives left office. Today, it's down to 7.4%. We know there's a lot more work to do. That is why we are pointing out to Canadians that all the Conservatives want is to cut.
Yeah, cut the Liberals
need the most.
Out of their job, not like actually cut them.
Speaker, in the high cost of living, it's a struggle for many women to buy menstrual products. This government recognizes this problem and recently launched the Menstrual Equity Fund pilot. to provide free menstrual products those that need them most through Food Banks Canada. During the Sexual and Reproductive Health Week, could the Minister provide an update on the progress of the pilot in my province and throughout Canada?
The honourable member for Women and Gender Equality.
Thank you so much to the member for her advocacy and hard work.
Yes,
and
thank you. Thank you
so
so much.
Mr. Speaker, menstrual products are a basic need, but not everyone has access to them. So since launching the Menstrual Equity Fund pilot last September, almost 400 locations, including 14 in that member's province of Nova Scotia, have helped pull more than 1 million Canadians out of period poverty. That's 35 million products out the door in 6 months. We're providing real solutions to real challenges, menstrual products for those who need them, when they need them, period, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, a 3-bedroom apartment near Verdun Metro Station in Montreal. There's a leak in the bathroom, balconies threatening to collapse, holes in the ceiling, mold all over the place. That's the home where Isabelle Gagnon and her partner Maxime Pilon live with their newborn baby. This is a result of decades of Conservative and Liberal government cuts to affordable housing. Instead of proposing solutions, though, the Conservative leader prefers to insult Quebec's mayors, and the Liberals are dragging their feet when it comes to the housing crisis. Why are the Liberals letting people down? Letting down people like Ms. Gagnon and Mr. Pilon? The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Honourable member for his question and for his concern for the quality of accommodations that families are living through in this country. He's right to point out that for several decades, governments, both Liberal and Conservative, failed to invest in affordable housing, but that changed with the introduction of the National Housing Strategy in 2017. We've been investing to help build or retrofit several 100,000 homes that people are living in today. In the fall economic statement, we've recapitalized the Affordable Housing Fund with an additional $1 billion and another $300 million towards cooperative housing. We're going to continue to make the investments necessary to ensure that every Canadian has a roof over their head.
The honourable member from Edmonton Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, as Netanyahu bombs Rafah, the supposed safe zone, over 75 Palestinians were killed overnight. We are witnessing a crime of unproportionate horror in Gaza every day. Children are left orphaned as entire families are wiped out in this onslaught. Meanwhile, the Liberals continue to arm Netanyahu over $28 million worth of military exports since October alone. How many more Palestinian children have to be killed for this government to end arms exports to Israel?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank the member for that question. It's an important question. What is happening in Gaza is a complete tragedy. Netanyahu's military operation Rafah is devastating Palestinians and others who are seeking shelter. Gazans have nowhere else to go, and as the minister said, asking them to move again is totally unacceptable. This violence must stop. We must have a sustainable peace. Hostages must be returned, and we must find a way forward to get humanitarian assistance to the people who need it the most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thus comes to an end of questions.
All right, we're not going to see who's in the gallery. Been there, done that, and I did not see this coming. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in for today's question period. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre are both scheduled to appear for tomorrow's episode. It's going to be a great one, but on your way out, I want to encourage you all to hit the like button if you haven't yet. Smash it and subscribe. We're en route to 80,000, and then the next milestone is 100,000 subscribers, which is absolutely huge. So on behalf of all Canadians, thank you so much for supporting this channel, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.